Has this ever happened to you?
Oh boy, a mushroom.
What? Well, I can't tell you how to deal with that. I can assure you, it can be much, much worse. Oh, you've heard about mushrooms that'll knock you down, but today we'll be going over the ones that make sure you don't get back up. Poisonous mushrooms are a fascination of mine, and every time I mention that I forage, the same question inevitably comes up. How do you avoid the deadly ones? The usual answer is that I don't eat anything that I can identify, but the more nuanced answer is I know precisely, unequivocally, which ones will kill me. Much like how the first plants you should learn to identify are poison ivy, oak, and sumac, the first group of mushrooms you should be able to identify are the amanitas. If you're interested in foraging for fungi, this information might save you a trip to the hospital or the grave. My name is Clancy here at Crater Alias, and today I'll be talking about lethal mushrooms, how the toxins work, and most importantly, how to make sure you don't eat one. So, let's get started. To reiterate, I'm just focusing on the deadly highlights. There's plenty of fungi, which will cause stomach issues, but not death. Also, just mushrooms for today. This is going to be a complete list, including molds, microfungi, and this guy.
Oh, I want to stab ya.
So today is just mushrooms. The all fungi list is coming later. Starting with the funniest group of mushroom toxins, the alcohol intolerancers. Mushrooms that, if you pair with alcohol, will send your liver and you to an early grave. Now there's a lot of these, but the most well-studied toxin is coprine. Found in the genus Coprinopsis, coprine is a toxin you can eat as much of as you'd like. Coprine binds to an enzyme that deals with the digestion of ethanol, aldehyde dehydrogenase. Ethanol itself is toxic, but we have enzymes in our body to help us break them down. Alcohol dehydrogenase and aldehyde dehydrogenase. Take out aldehyde dehydrogenase, however, and bye-bye liver. The buildup of aldehydes causes the flush reaction and hangovers, and if you're drinking enough alcohol while consuming coprine, it might kill you. It doesn't help that Coprinopsis is closely related to the genus Coprinus, and they can be confused if you're not paying attention. The main way to avoid death by hangover is to not drink alcohol while consuming Coprinopsis, or if you want to be extra safe, Coprinus. Not medical advice, consult an ID book, go to a doctor, call your mom. Coprine poisoning doesn't happen often, since you have to eat a relatively rare group of fungi and also drink a lot of alcohol, so most people will be safe from coprine poisoning. Next up is the toxin arelanine, the toxin found in the group Cortinarius, a genus with literally thousands of species. A trait seen in all quaternary species is the presence of the cortina. The Latin word for curtain, the cortina, is a kind of veil, or velum if you're a nerd, which covers the gills before the spores are released. Now, people say it looks like a curtain, but I say it looks more like a web than its namesake. Circling back to arelanine, which, when ingested, causes mild mushroom poisoning, in a set of symptoms I'm going to call the works. Vomiting, diarrhea, stomachache. These more obvious signs are followed by a period which can last from a few days to a few weeks where you experience no symptoms. Then comes the scary part. Arelanine has been working in the background, causing extensive oxidative damage. Reactive oxygen species are the type of molecule responsible for this damage. Think of them as a newly divorced molecule. They're mad, they're not whole, and instead of finding a new electron or going to molecule therapy, they go into a crowded restaurant and convince all the other molecules and electrons that the molecules cheated on their electrons. And all the electrons end up believing it and leave. Then the molecules start tearing the place up. Reactive oxygen species end up damaging the structure of the restaurant, the molecules in the cell. This causes cumulative oxidative damage, which damages proteins, DNA, and causes cell death. Arelanine creates reactive oxygen species and interferes with enzymes meant to break them down. These toxins are successfully filtered out of the blood, but the organ responsible for doing so, the kidneys, is left holding the toxic bag. Kidney tubule death and kidney death soon follows. Despite this toxicity, you shouldn't worry too much about arelanine poisoning, since Cortinarius doesn't have too many edible lookalikes, except for maybe bluet. Look for the cortina, slimy cap, and brown spores to compare to the lack of a cortina, a dry cap, and lighter colored spores for the bluet. What I am surprised about is that this hasn't made its way into a Sherlock Holmes novel. On to a set of 3 toxins, ibotenic acid, muscimol, and muscarine. And if that doesn't give it away, we're talking about muscaria. Everyday video, like and subscribe. Amanita muscaria, me. Despite having 3 distinct toxins, Amanita muscaria is actually one of the more edible amanitas, as detailed in that previous video. Let's start with muscimol and ibotenic acid. These two are present in Amanita muscaria relatives such as Gassoi, Persicina, and Aprica, as well as Amanita pantherina. These two are pretty similar, and if you're an organic chemist, you might realize that this group right here can be decarbed off. That actually is what happens in the body when ingesting ibotenic acid, it gets converted into muscimol. Despite the similarity, these two mimic opposing neurotransmitters, muscimol to GABA and ibotenic acid to glutamate. I'm a biochemist by training, not a human biologist or a neuroscientist, so to be broad but mostly correct, glutamate stimulates neurons and GABA inhibits neuronal signaling as well as the production of neurotransmitters. The glutamate mimicry from ibotenic acid can cause paranoia and seizures, but the GABA mimicry is the more fatal pathway, assuming that you're eating the untreated mushroom. Muscimol travels throughout the nervous system, crossing the blood-brain barrier and binding tightly to GABA receptors. In high enough doses, you'll face delirium and depression of the central nervous system. This can cause sleepiness, coma, and in extreme doses, it can prevent your brain from sending strong enough signals to your muscles. Now, your heart is fine since it has its own system, but not your diaphragm, so it can stop you from breathing. The other toxin in Amanita muscaria is muscarine. Despite it being named after Amanita muscaria, it's actually more prevalent in other genera such as Cladosobi and Anosobi. Ingesting muscarine will initially cause really bad mushroom poisoning symptoms, the works, but it also binds to muscarinic acetylcholine receptors. Acetylcholine is also a neurotransmitter, and the receptors are named that way because they're most sensitive to muscarine. Quick aside, receptors are just proteins. They're how neurons sense things. If a receptor binds to its corresponding transmitter, quick aside to the aside, these transmitters are also just a kind of molecule. It alerts the neuron. Depending on the receptor, it'll either send or not send a signal, depending on the exact molecule detected. Sound complicated? Well, it's not neuroscience. Oh wait, the muscarinic pathway is relatively slow, responsible for mediating the central and parasympathetic nervous system. Don't ask me what the parasympathetic nervous system is, it just says that in the papers. Muscarine only acts on this parasympathetic part, but take away the mediators and you'll get heart palpitations, seizures, and coma. I guess I'd say the closest look-alike to Cladosobi or Anosobi is bluet, but I'm not really sure of what looks like that, so maybe there's other ones, but be careful when you're trying to search for bluet, I guess. Even if you do happen to eat one of these high muscarine-containing mushrooms, get you some atropine and you'll be okay. So far, I would consider these minor toxins. They can kill you, but either they're rare, or they're easy to treat, or easy to identify. Unless you're in Europe or the Middle East, then I'd be a bit more worried about Coordinarius. But otherwise, you should be okay. Except for me. But let's talk about why these mushrooms produce toxins. The answer is obvious. They deter predation, but from what is something you might not expect. For mammals like humans or deer, it takes some time for us to actually experience the effects of the poison, long after we've already eaten the mushroom and then some. But if you're already eaten, there's no use in a deadly poison. It doesn't help that deadly mushrooms don't really signal their poison like animals do. Mild poison might actually work better for large mammals. If you get really sick instead of actually dying, you might avoid future mushrooms which look like the original one. Replace the mild toxin with a deadly one and... yeah, no time to learn. This may be less true on an evolutionary timeline as opposed to a single organism timeline. Some animals have been observed to avoid deadly mushrooms, such as flies and slugs. In fact, not only do they not like eating these deadly mushrooms as opposed to non-toxic corollaries, it might actually be more toxic to them. I've been very human-centric with my definition of deadly. If anything, it's these insects and invertebrates which these toxins were evolved to deter. Something that's fine for us might not be for another species, or vice versa, or maybe we make it safe through cooking. There's many more toxins which cause the works, sans death. Even chitin, an integral part of the fungal cell, is a mild irritant if not cooked. Despite the arguably wider spread success of these mild toxins, there's one group that pulls no punches when it comes to lethality. 8 amino acids in a simple ring. The individual building blocks of proteins can link to create massive structures, thousands of amino acids in length, but all that's needed for these fungi is 8. Amanidin, and more broadly amatoxins, are the final group on our list. consisting of the signature poisons of the Death Cap and Destroying Angel, Amanita phalloides, and Bisporigera. A toxin so successful it's been seen in multiple genera of fungi, likely through horizontal gene transfer in Gallerina and the not so creatively named deadly Gallerina, and Lepiota, the false parasol. Horizontal gene transfer is the uptake of wild DNA into the genome, and is likely how these three got their Amanita. The odds of acquiring a gene that is usable, let alone beneficial, is vanishingly small, and the fact that this happened thrice should signal to you how successful Amanita is as a toxin. Amanita comes with an energy cost, but it's well worth the price of admission. When ingested, these toxins make their way to the liver through the portal vein, taking blood from the stomach and intestines. This mechanism is unlike arelanine, which, instead of getting the toxin straight from the digestive system, receives it over time since arelanine enters the bloodstream and slowly gets filtered out. The buildup is gradual versus the amatoxins' direct dose. Amatoxins are hepatotoxic, meaning they damage the liver. Now, it targets two main enzymes, RNA polymerase II and, to a lesser extent, RNA polymerase III. These two enzymes are responsible for changing DNA into RNA. Now, biochemistry courses are completely focused around how this whole process works, but the short and sweet of it is, no RNA means no proteins. Proteins are responsible for maintaining and building the cell, and without proteins, toxins and debris fill up, causing cell death. The liver tries to save itself, inducing apoptosis or programmed cell death in order to try and get rid of faulty cells. The problem is, the cells aren't faulty, it's that this toxin is making them faulty. These dead cells contribute to debris buildup, and after a while, your body can't take it anymore and your liver fails. After your liver fails, your body has no way to get rid of other toxins, which means systemic failure and death. And without early intervention and a liver transplant, Amanita is very, very lethal. Amanitas are most often confused with other edible amanitas, such as Jacksonii or Caesaria, or if you're really desperate, I guess Agaricus, but I don't forage for Agaricus. I don't think you should. When they're young, however, the story's a little different because of this sort of egg shape. While not common, you can also forage for stinkhorns and puffballs, which could be confused for these young amanitas. Edible puffballs will always have a white interior that's just a single color all the way through. Or if it's old and not edible, it'll be kind of brown, but they won't have any structures like you see with the Amanita eggs. Stinkhorns also have a structure like the Amanitas, but they're usually more colored and they're kind of slimy and squishy, and I don't like talking about it. Amanita eggs have a clear structure. They might have gills and stems, even though they're really, really young. So if you happen to be foraging for puffballs or stinkhorn eggs, make sure not to eat an Amanita. Consult a field guide or an expert if you want to eat any of these near Amanita species. An important question you may have is, how many people have died from these deadly fungi? Well, not a lot. Yay! The Amanita and co. are by far the deadliest, with an estimated 68 to 95% of all mushroom-related poisoning deaths in the US being attributed to amatoxins and other cyclopeptide poisons. But this only amounts to roughly 35 cases from 2000 to 2018. This means only 50 total mushroom poisoning deaths occurred over the course of 18 years. In countries where fungi and foraging are more present, mushroom poisoning cases also rise. A report from China in 2019 showed about 22 people died in that year alone. We have poor statistical coverage worldwide, but assuming even a couple hundred deaths, that might as well be a rounding error compared to the 60 million deaths yearly. So all these mushrooms are highly toxic. I wouldn't really consider them deadly given the amount of people they kill yearly. Now, that doesn't mean go out and eat any random mushroom you find. Of course, not medical advice. The odds of death by mushroom are statistically low, but you should never eat anything you don't know the exact identity of. If you're getting into foraging, I would keep these guys in mind, and make sure your next morel isn't actually a deadly fungus in disguise. Oh god, no. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Bye. So dumb.